right, as we're waiting for folks to come in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can share your name, your organization, and your favorite spring activity. So we have a pretty packed, exciting agenda today with some uh, community voices that we'll highlight to get some perspectives on CTE. The first up, we'll have a spotlight of one of our leadership communities within the Success Network, Whiteside Area Career Center. We'll hear from Josh Johnson. We'll share some pretty incredible work they've been doing in collecting student voice within their CTE programming and making, those modifications and making sure that programming is aligned to student interest. Then we'll hear from a student at a Chicago public school who it goes to a school with a pretty high participation CTE program relative to the rest of her district. And she'll share kind of some findings that she collected by discussing some of the data around CTE participation in her school with students at her, some of her peers at her high school. Then we will get into some state and federal policy updates. So we'll talk through some of the top line themes of what's been happening in the legislature thus far this legislative season. We'll get some updates on Dual Credit Quality Act, the updated ESSA plan, some high level notes on Workforce Pell, as well as an updated scale of college and career pathway endorsements. We'll see kind of how those programs are expanding across the state in light of the July 2020, this past July 2026 or 2025 implementation deadline for folks to opt in or opt out. Then we'll have some interactive discussion. We will build on the discussion that we kicked off, if those of you who were able to join us at our Success Network annual conference just 2 weeks ago in Moraine Valley. We'll talk about what's next for us as a state with our vision now that we've passed 2025 and moving forward from our 60 by 2025 post-secondary attainment goal. Then we'll close out with some events and resources that are coming up within the Success Network and beyond. And we'll close out with our kind of announcement for scheduling our next policy committee session and a closing survey. All right, so I'm really thrilled to be welcoming this morning Josh Johnson. He is director at Whiteside Area Career Center, and he'll be sharing about pretty incredible survey work that they've been doing to assess student needs and interest within their CTE programming, talk about kind of the history behind that initiative and how it's impacted their thinking for CTE programming moving forward. So Josh, thanks for joining us, and I'll kick it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys having me. Before we start, I'll say this survey was definitely, it was not intended to be something that was big and arduous and time consuming. It was something that we just wanted to be intentional. And I'll talk about intentionality throughout my slides. But this has definitely it's blown up to something bigger and I think better than what we had ever expected. So just to introduce myself, I am Josh Johnson. I'm the executive director at the Whiteside Area Career Center. We are located in Sterling, Illinois, which is almost 2 hours straight west of Chicago, if you know where that is. And I'll talk about some of who we serve here in a second. Next slide, if you don't mind. So my building was originally built in 1965. It was opened in 1966 with 8 of the original districts there on the left. Shortly thereafter, there were 4 more districts that joined. And then over the last 60 years almost, some of those schools have consolidated. Some of those schools no longer exist because they've been absorbed by other places. And the 18 school districts that we provide services to are there on the right. Those districts, many of those districts travel somewhere between 30 and 35 minutes to get to our building. So students are on a bus for 35 or 40 minutes to come to an hour and 45-minute class in our building, and then they hop on a bus and go back to their district. So for students to take classes in our building is quite a commitment through their day, right? Um, and we can go down that rabbit hole of what's important of time commitment and all that kind of stuff. I have that debate a lot, so it's an interesting conversation. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So, a little bit of history about me. I have been an educator for 16 years now. I have been a high school principal before I was the director here at the Career Center, and I've been here for 8 years. And I must say, working in career and tech ed is one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. And it is, I cannot speak highly enough, and I cannot speak to the funding that we need in career and tech ed to support the programs that we have, because not every student wants to go to college in a 4-year typical degree. So funding an alternative, whether it be a trade school, whether it be a certificate earned program, is very, very pivotal to student success. So please call your representatives, call your congressman, and support our career and tech ed initiative. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the survey. So the survey came about because we wanted to be intentional about our next steps. And I'll talk about some of the successes of our programs that we currently have, some of the struggling programs that we currently have, and how we wanted to be intentional about whether we keep certain programs and whether we move to a totally different program, and some of the skill set that we provide to our students embedded in those programs. Um, this is only the second year that we have offered this survey, so it's still kind of a working document. So I'd love to hear your feedback on like I said, I'm not an expert of giving surveys, so I'd love to hear some feedback from people that have experience in doing this. Um, Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Um, so the method that we use to administer this, we have 18 districts. Like I said, we have 18 different counselors. So we send out the survey to counselors, and then they forward that on to the students through the email link for a Google form. The reason we do that is because we do not have all of our students or all the students in the region, which would account for about 2,200 freshmen through junior students, and we get about 1,600 students that take the survey. So we have to um, administer it through counselors because they have the emails and they have the contact. Um, so many of the students will send it to students and just have them take it on their own time. A lot of districts will actually block out a time for students to take the survey, which really helps us out because then we get 100% of their student population that takes it. The challenges that we face, though, in administering a survey like this, obviously, is finding the time. High school students' time is very blocked out and it's very full. So finding the time for counselors to administer this is difficult. Student participation sometimes is difficult. And getting them to take it seriously. We are talking about freshmen, sophomores, and juniors in high school. So sometimes getting them to take it seriously is difficult. And also, if they administer it to a one class, and then those students would be in the same class, sometimes getting them taking out the duplicates is something I can do after the fact. So if we have duplication of the survey, I can take those out after the fact. Next slide, please. All right, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about our funding. So the way that WACC is funded, we have four main sources of funding. One is student tuition, which we charge $1,155 for the last 8 years, and that tuition has not changed in almost, well, 10 years. It's gone up $5. And our philosophy has been that we want to earn the district's money because we don't want to charge any more than we have to for the services that we provide to the districts. That 1155 is covered by the district, so it is not charged to the student or their parents. So our philosophy has been we want to fill our classes before we ever consider raising that tuition, and we've been pretty good at it. We haven't had to do that in 8 years. The other two are grants, CTEI and Perkins. CTEI is our state funded grant, and the Perkins grant is the federally funded CTEI or CTE grant. And then we do have a couple of private donations that come in and really help us out. So next slide, please. These are the 11 programs that we have currently. Actually, I think it's 10 because I will talk about computer technology. So computer technology is not on this list. Our computer technology program has seen a very significant decline in enrollment, which is part of the reason that we started this survey because we wanted to see where that falls on the interest of our students in the region. Um, so we have actually decided this year to riff that program of computer tech and try to move into something else in the next couple of years. But all of these programs, 8 of the 10 that we have right now, offer some kind of dual credit or certificate at the end of it, which we'll talk about through the survey. That seems to be something that the kids seem have designated as an important thing. Go ahead and next slide, please. All right, so we started out basically, we just wanted to know name, email, and what school the students are coming from. The school is important because we wanted to know, we can disaggregate that information per district if they want to see what kids are interested in. I've not been asked to do that by any districts, but I've offered it to them if they're thinking about starting a program within their district. We want to know name because we don't want this to be anonymous. We wanted to know that if we have duplicates and who's taking it seriously. And then email, we just like to have contact with students. Go ahead, next slide, please. All right, so like I said, we were intentional on only doing the survey with 9th, 10th, and 11th graders because we figured 12th graders are either in our program at WACC or they are, their opinion not that it doesn't matter, but their opinion is for college. Their opinion would be at post high school. So we wanted to be intentional about what we offer here for a high school program. So we chose to do it with the 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. The total pool of students that we could draw from is around 22 to 2,300 students, and we got a 1,600 student response, which we figured that was a very, very good sample pool. Next slide, please. So this is the meat and potatoes of the survey, right? What are students interested in? 1 through 10 are all classes that we offer currently, except for number 7, the business class. We do not currently offer the business class, which might tell you that is our best prospect, I would say, for a future program now that we have riffed the computer tech program. So criminal justice is a 1-year program. You can see that's on the very top. So there's a challenge there if we were to expand into a second program, if we want to be intentional about the future and expanding criminal justice, we don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul and divide the students that we have from a criminal justice program into two, because then both programs could potentially fail. That is why our business and potentially marketing, that marriage would be a really great next venture, potentially. We do offer an entrepreneurship class, number 12. We have a CEO program. If you know anything about the CEO program, wonderful. It is an amazing program. I would recommend that every district have something like that of an entrepreneurial class. But it is only a 1-year class and it is a very selective class because we only have so many seats. So to go into a building or a business class would marry very well with that CEO program. I do kind of want to stop here and ask, are there any questions so far? Because I would be happy to answer questions about what we offer and why we offer those things.
One question that comes to mind was just what surprises, if any, there were in this.
Sure. There weren't many that really stuck out. I would say one surprise was the computer tech. So number 13, computer tech, there's 176 kids that say they're interested in taking that program, but yet we only have an enrollment of 25 students in that class. So I guess that's a little surprising yet disheartening that there's a lot of kids interested in it, but they just don't take it. Other than that, it did really kind of show what we're doing is what we should be doing. The things that they're interested in are the things that we offer. So that's a little encouraging on the other end of that coin. So, but great question. Anything else that pops out to you guys on these numbers?
Dana, I see you've got your hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did want to just ask, and it's not exactly, I mean, it is a little bit about this, but I'm just curious more as to when the survey is administered to the students, right? In the 9th, 10th, and 11th
Sure.
grade. You may have already mentioned it and I missed it, but does it happen in the fall? and then it's
Yes.
repeated with the same students, maybe either in the spring or the next fall? That's my only question.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So the first time we administered this, because it was the first year, we didn't actually get it rolled out until January or February. And then this year, because we wanted the data early on, because we wanted to predict what was going to happen to give us the data to make a decision on the computer tech program, we actually administered this in September, right at the beginning of the year. And we plan to administer this every year around September, October. Um, but that was a great point. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
I'm
Oh,
just
go
a quick
ahead.
question. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering around like the distribution of the results that you got. Like, were you
Yep.
finding that, kind of equal numbers around the different 18 feeder high school districts? Are you
Yeah.
finding like gender
Yeah.
balance in terms of who's interested in participating?
We don't have a gender as part of the survey. I did not ask that. I just wanted to know how many bodies were willing to take the test. That might be something we could add to it later. But I don't know if that would make a difference because we just want to take all the kids that want to take our programs, whether they're male, female, or whatever they might be, whatever walk of life they might be in. Um, I'm sorry, what was your first question you had about that?
Yeah, just the like schools represented. Was it,
Oh, yeah.
high
So
numbers from
we got a
some schools?
representation from all 18 districts in some capacity or another. So some of them gave it to only the kids that might be interested in CTE. So that's kind of a little skewed information on the survey because they asked them if you're interested in CTE, then take this survey. But we wanted to know from everybody. So in the future, we're going to be a little more intentional about we want every single student in your district to take it. But we did get representation from all 18 districts. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Emily, I think you had a
Yeah,
question.
Madeline's question made me think of, I'm curious if you noticed any differences across like grade levels. Like, so if like ninth graders were saying they're more, if most of the respondents who were interested in like entrepreneurship were ninth
Sure.
graders, or, if there were differences by grade level that you've noticed. And I'd be curious over time as you continue to administer the survey, if
Sure.
that is something that like you see patterns and like interest changing kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be honest, that's not even something we've looked into as far as one grade level being more interested in another class than another. But it's definitely something we could do. Yeah. Right. You want to go ahead and move on to the next slide? So we also asked some questions about whether students are interested in even taking WACC. So of the 1,600 plus responses that we got, we had about 1,200, 12 to 1,400 that said, yeah, we want to take WACC, which is very promising for our center. Go ahead and next slide, please. So we also wanted to be intentional, and you can take some of these questions with a grain of salt because sometimes students don't know what they don't know until we tell them, hey, this is important, this is going to get you a job. So um, it was very promising to see that the students know that they want hands-on training, that they know they want to get out into the work world, they want those internships, and they want that kind of experience while they're in high school, and it'll give them an opportunity after they get out of high school. So that was extremely promising. And actually, in the last 5 years, we have expanded our hands-on training and internship capabilities. Of the 727 students that we have come here, we have about 150 kids that are out in internships at least 3 days a week, which we think is just awesome for students' experience. So the certificate importance, and like I say, some of these questions we can take with a grain of salt because students don't know what they don't know. This would be one of the case in point questions. Students don't quite know how important a certificate is for them to acquire before going to apply for a job. And that's something that we intend through WACC to kind of drive home, right? That the certificates are important. It is still promising that, over 800, almost 900 students said, yeah, they're somewhat important or very important. But that 622 of saying, well, I don't care if I get it or not, I just kind of want to learn the skill. We can do better in the future to say, yes, you can learn the skill, but getting that certificate is really what is going to get you the job later on, right? So we figure that's kind of important. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we also wanted to ask what kind of marketing is hitting our kids the best, right? Is it our school counselors, which is over 800 students said that yes, their school counselors is probably the most important asset we have. 827 said the tours at WACC. So we do, to explain that, we do a few things throughout the year. We have a building principal that does two amazing things. One is they visit every school district and they talk to all the sophomores that are potentially going to take WACC classes next year. Some districts we get to talk to every sophomore, some we get to talk to whoever wants to maybe take a CTE course. But those are pivotal to get contact with students and tell them that we exist in about all of our programs. The other thing we do is at the end of the year, we have an eighth grade tour. Every eighth grader in our region gets to tour our building through a 3 day span. It is controlled chaos in our building for 3 days with over 1,300 eighth graders touring our building. Then, when they're sophomores, they get to tour again and they get to talk to our instructors a little bit more with a little bit more personal contact. So, hopefully, both of those visits will plant the seed for them to want to come to WACC. Um, and as you can see, the things that we do, the principal visits and the tours of WACC and talking to school counselors, which we meet with counselors 3 times a year to talk about program success and program growth and all that stuff and gain their feedback of what they'd like to see in our programs. So the things that we do are the things that are working with kids. Um, our social media has gotten a heck of a lot better in the last couple of years. Our building principal is amazing at doing stuff like that and getting the word out on some of the amazing stuff that we have going on. So that has grown a lot in the last 2 years as well. So like I said, just very similar to the earlier slide about skills attainment, we just kind of wanted to ask the question in a different platform. And this one, they were allowed to pick as many as they wanted of the skills that they would like to attain by taking a CTE course. And it is once again, very promising that our students pick, communication skills, problem solving skills, some of the top skills that they want to achieve are the things that we have driven home in the last 5 years and really wanted to embed in our programs. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are our next steps? Like I said, our computer tech program has unfortunately met its end, so we want to be very intentional on what we replace that with. So would it be criminal justice? Kind of like we said, we don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. We don't want to divide one program into another and then both struggle. Would business marketing be something that students would be interested in, and we would have enough students to justify the program? And I say that because we have 3 blocks throughout our day, and we need to have probably around 18 to 22 students in each block for us to justify the cost of the program, right? To pay for the staff member, pay for the equipment, pay for the supplies. So what is our return on investment, right? So that is a consideration for whatever program we might go into next. We want to do some intentional marketing. So one of the things that we don't capture is parent involvement. We've not really considered in the past having parents involved in the decision for a kid to take a WACC course, and we're trying to look for platforms for us to be able to do that. We do, however, have an open house where a lot of our current students can bring their parents in to see what we have going on. But we don't capture the kids that are considering our program. So we've considered possibly moving our open house to the end of the year so that those kids that have chosen to take our class can come tour the program with their parents and see what they're going to get to do. That way we can get some parent involvement in their decision. And we always look for ways to expand our social media platforms. And like I said, when we started, the survey is definitely a working document. So if you have any suggestions on things that we could do or things that we could do better, I would love to hear them because I am by no means an expert in doing surveys. So other than that, I think the next one is just if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh.
Mhm.
I know I have a question, but I'll let the room, if anyone has any questions from your presentation.
Sure.
Appreciate the background as well as the level of detail, I guess, of the questions that you're
Sure.
asking.
Well, I hope I didn't ramble too much. I mean,
Oh,
I wanted
no.
to keep it pointed, but like I said, I wanted to make it valuable. So if there's any questions, by all means, please ask.
Guess I can kick us off. I loved the question you had around, what do you most value getting out of this experience? And,
Yeah.
you mentioned that 622 students who kind of were indifferent about getting a certificate. I'm curious about, roughly approximately how many of your CTE programs have a certificate as the end point. And I'm curious
Sure.
about like the employer engagement side of that. How did you kind of work with employers to
Sure.
determine what are those
Sure.
certificates? Yeah.
Well, to answer that, every one of our programs has an advisory committee. So we meet at least once, maybe 2 or 3 times a year for some of the more prominent committees. But every one of them has an advisory committee that consists of industry professionals that kind of drives our curriculum, right? In CTE, there's no standards really. There's no, and there are standards that are out there, but they're not mandatory. Kind of like when you take a math and a science class, there's mandatory standards that you have to cover every year. We utilize our advisory groups to drive our local need, right? The need drives our program, I should say. So those advisory groups, the feedback that we get from them and what we need or what they need drives what we can offer in our programs. For instance, our automotive program, our advisory group met probably 5 years ago now and said we need our students to know alignment racks, right? They need to know how to run an alignment rack. Well, we didn't have an alignment rack, so we partnered with a service center, one of the dealerships in town, and it was actually Farm and Fleet that partnered with us, and we bought an alignment rack and the entire computer system for the alignment rack, which was, if we were to buy that new, would be somewhere in the $80,000 range. Now we bought used stuff, a used head, and we bought a new lift, which ended up being around $25,000. But it still it still warrants to be said that was a great partnership for us, and our advisory groups give back to us in that manner to provide the education that they need in their place of business.
Thanks, Josh. We have a question in the chat, which is, how does AI and the shifting nature of work impact what programs you may offer?
AI in a lot of our hands-on programs hasn't really affected much. Our computer programs, like our digital media arts program, they dabble in AI graphic generation, which we try to stay as close to the times as we can in programs like that. I hate to say, and I can only speculate, that AI has maybe been a small reason that our computer tech program has kind of floundered over the last 5 years. Um, I don't know that for a fact, but students, they want to use the computers, they want to create things. Doing the nuts and bolts of a computer and replacing this card and that card and then reinstalling Windows is not the most salivating thing for kids to do. It's not the most interesting. It's not the exciting thing. So AI has made things so much more exciting that sometimes those monotonous programs take a hit. And that's only my opinion, by the way. I don't have
Yeah,
any research to
yeah.
back that up. That's only my opinion.
Yeah, there's two questions kind of on outcomes in the chat that I think are somewhat related, but are on two sides of the coin. So
Sure.
Edith is asking, love the connection with what employers want and what you're offering, and is curious about if you track how many students who leave your programs get employed in the region. And then there's another question about like, do you do any surveying of students who are earning these, completing these programs, earning these certificates to learn about their level of satisfaction? So I know those are two different kind of
Sure.
outcome questions, but
Yep.
curious about both.
Okay, so the first question about how do we retain contact with those students post high school, right? That has been a challenge for the entire state of Illinois for since I started in CTE for the last 8 years. There is a grant section that we report on what do we have for post-secondary retainment? Like how many
Hmm.
of these kids are going to college? How many of these kids get hired on jobs? A lot of that is kind of speculative. But we do praise the kids. We do, I should say praise. We acknowledge the kids that are going into the workforce through a signing day. So at the end of our school year, we do a signing day for any student that signs to go work with, let's say, a manufacturer. They sign a contract with a hospital to go be a lab technician or something like that. We recognize that through a signing day where parents can come, the business employer comes, and they will actually, they don't necessarily sign anything, but we make it look like they signed something. And it really is a special day for kids to recognize that they have made a decision for their future. Kind of the same as like a kid that would be going to play sports for a university somewhere, gets to sign with that university and get recognized for it. We provide that to any students that make that choice. So.
And then, so the other question being, do you do any surveying of students who have participated in, completed, et cetera, programs to
Sure.
see what their level of satisfaction is or what feedback they may have?
We haven't yet, but that's a very good point that we very much could at the end of the year take a survey of the students that we currently have to see what they're doing and where they're going and what satisfaction they have with the program that they've taken. I do like that idea, and that'll be something we consider.
That's awesome. And then there's one more question in the chat, and this is not to stop anyone from dropping more questions in the chat. Looks like Damar, you read my mind. But folks are curious if there are early college credit opportunities through the courses at WACC. So
Yep.
what is the extent to which early college credit is
Yeah.
embedded in your
So
program?
if you want to go back to that slide, I think it's the fourth or so slide that I offered where it says all of our programs. This one, that one right there. Hang on, go forward again. Go back one. That one. All right. So these are
Oh,
the
here we
10
go.
programs
Yeah.
that we offer, right? So if you look at all of them, there's 3 dual credits, there's on-the-job training, dual credit. I think we only have 2 programs that do not currently offer dual credit or some kind of certificate, and that would be building trades because they just don't really exist, and criminal justice. And the only reason criminal justice doesn't is because the ICCB has mandated that you have to have a master's in order to offer dual credit. Now,
Hmm.
that could potentially change in the near future that we can do a topics course, which is basically not a criminal justice program course, but it could get an elective course for those students to be successful once they get to their junior college, right? It would
Yeah.
be junior college specific, though, so it would not transfer.
Right. And then the last question in the chat is Damar is excited about the internship opportunities. What industries are the internships primarily coming from, and are all of
Sure.
them paid?
We have a ton in our health sciences program because our CNA kids have to go to their clinical, so we consider that an internship. At the same time, our allied health program, which is typically the second year of our health sciences classes, those kids get put into internships wherever they basically choose. So some of them want to go to be a vet tech. We try to get them in with a veterinarian. Some of them want to be a physical therapist. We'll go put them in a physical therapy business and they can shadow that. So based on their interest, we put them into internships. The other prominent one would be our welding and manufacturing program. We get most of our second year students out to an internship by November, December. We try to. But we're open to internships in automotive. We get a lot of kids that go to service centers in automotive. We've been open to computer tech. We've had maybe 1 or 2 in the last few years. But we're open to anyone. Oh, and ECE. I'm sorry. ECE has a lot of students. All the second years go to an internship through that program as well. Culinary arts has had a few here and there. But like I said, like I started to say, we're open to any one of our programs going out to internships. We would like to put them in, especially as a second year that they've already established and we've been able to vet them to get them out into an internship.
I guess as we wrap up, if there's any sort of word of advice you would have to other area career centers or districts who might be considering undertaking a similar survey or who might be considering updating their own existing processes, any sort of last words of advice?
Um, if you're thinking about doing it, do it. That's all I would say. It's great information to have, if not just for your district of what's important, because it will drive some future decision making, and it really has for us. And we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to continue to hone the survey so we get the data that we want and what we need. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that energy. Just do it. Jump in and
Hmm.
continue refining as you go.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. Really
Hmm.
valuable insights here. And I'll be thinking about, yeah, a lot of the points that you raised and how we think about expanding CTE across the state and making sure that it's
Sure.
central with student voice at the center.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Mhm.
All right. So speaking of student voice, we're now going to hear from a member of our Success Network Student Advisory Council. She, just as some background, volunteered to prepare a presentation and do some deep research within her school community around one of the views on our Success Network data dashboard. We had 5 students who conducted these different kind of focus groups and analyze their findings within the context of the data dashboard. And we heard from those 5 students at the Success Network conference just a couple of weeks ago. But wanted to highlight Aisha's amazing presentation today, as it's central to the same theme of including student voice in CTE and making sure that students that are interested and excited about having these opportunities have the access to do them within the fields that they're interested in. So just to introduce Aisha Kamara, she's a junior, class of 2027 at South Shore International College Prep within Chicago Public Schools. And she'll be presenting just some findings that she had on this dashboard view of CTE participation, looking statewide, looking district-wide within Chicago Public Schools, and then more specifically within her own home high school. So I will pass it over to Aisha.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Kamar, and I'm a junior at South Shore International College Preparatory. And a little bit about me is I'm enrolled in the CT program at my school, the medical program. And currently, I'm in that class right now, but it's okay because I already know what we're learning so far about the intake and entry system. And yes, so let's take it away. About the school that I did the focus group at was my school, South Shore International College Preparatory, and it's home to 600 students. The demographic for this is 95% of it is African American students, while the other 5% is roughly around Hispanic or biracial students. And the interesting fact about my school is that it's known for its rigorous academics like the CT program, the business and medical program, as well as we are an IB school, so we do have IB classes, DP classes, and dual enrollment classes. The dashboard that I chose to help my focus group on was CT participation, and a little bit about CT participation is that it's known for the percentage of students taking or enrolled in career and technical educational courses. And to talk briefly about my focus group, it was home to 9 students, and I split them among 3 per group. And a lot of people were interested in joining the group, so I had to ask Siri to generate a number for me. And the person who was closest to the number, I chose them for the focus group. So it would be like a randomized kind of thing. And each focus group was centered around 11 graders between the ages of 15 to 16. So there were many discoveries in my data set. There's 2 I'll talk about. The first discovery was low CT participation. And across all my focus groups, the students were mainly surprised about how low the CT participation was. Because when they were younger, they dreamt about being nurses, doctors, or even dentists. And it was really weird for them to see how low that popular field was. And for my school's CT participation rate is 20%, while CPS or Chicago Public Schools is only 11.7%. My next discovery was the awareness of CT programs. And amongst all my focus group, every student showed the awareness of the CT programs because my school is a college preparatory and they do prepare us for post-secondary skills and just post-secondary in general. And not only did the data show how low the CT participation was, but it only showed that the low CT participation rate wasn't due to lack of motivation, but the lack of access in certain districts and schools. To talk briefly about this data chart, the blue line is South Shore and the orange line is Chicago Public Schools. And between the years of 2020 to 2025, my school, the blue line, 20.8% for 2020, while it never dropped as drastically as CPS did, it only dropped down by 0.65%, which is in 2025, which is 20.20%. And the orange line, Chicago Public Schools, in the year of 2022, it started from 14.1% and it dropped drastically by 4% in 2025, which lands it in 10.96%. Some findings and recommendations. So overall, in conclusion, the data set is extremely low for Chicago Public Schools. And if you didn't know, CPS only takes up 1.3% out of the 3.0% in Illinois. So it really shows that the data set reflects poorly because there's a lack of access and a constant decline in CT participation in schools and districts. And another interesting fact is the Illinois statewide percentage for CTE participation is 48.8%, while Chicago Public Schools is only 11.7%, as I mentioned before. And I do believe that this data set and the numbers can change and will change in the future. So educators or policymakers or even anyone in general, they should consider guest speakers. And the guest speakers can come from different schools or different careers, and they can express how successful they were through the CT program. We recently had I believe, a Navy SEAL come to our school, and she talked briefly about how successful she was through the CT program. Now, this week, we're going to have a dentist, my career. She's going to come in and talk briefly about her success through the CT program at her school. And I'm really excited for that. And another recommendation is better fundings. And the fundings can go to schools with a CT program. Currently, we do have a CT program. We have to share fundings between business and entrepreneurship as well as the medical program. So there is a lot of fundraising going on. I am the HOSA treasurer. HOSA stands for Health Occupation Students of America, and I basically fund for the fundraisers. I maintain the payments, the receipts, everything that requires money or business handling. I do it. I run the guns. So better fundings for the schools can be really helpful. And my last recommendation is forming partnerships. And the partnerships can be with hospitals, universities, or even industries. And my last example for this is at my school once again. We are partnered with Lloyd Children's Hospital, and they love coming to us and expressing how successful they were in different careers with us as their students and as their internships and apprenticeships. And another partnership that we do have at our school was recently we have Zebroda Medical. I'm not sure if you know that name, but Zebroda Medical, they love coming to us and they helped us fund for our poster trip coming up. So I'm really excited and I made it for all my competitions. So it was really good to see how the money really came through. Thank you so much for hearing out my presentation, and hopefully one of my recommendations did stick out with you. And if you have any questions, you can ask now. And I'm open to anything.
Thank you so much, Aisha, especially taking time out of your busy day at school. Really incredible work that you've done here. Just kind of to kick off a couple questions for you. Just wondering, like, what was your favorite part of conducting this research, and maybe what kind of skills did you get out of the process?
Okay. My favorite part about this whole project and this presentation was probably just collecting data from the focus groups, to be honest, because it was really interesting to see their different perspectives on the data set. And it really showed that some schools really only have trade schools, like cosmetology or even engineering. But our school is really different from that. And many students or many African Americans, if I were to say, they're really interested in cosmetology. And there was a topic that was brought up for my focus group. And a skill that I did learn was really looking at the data set and interpreting it, because I'm not that good at interpreting data sets. And just by developing that skill beforehand, because I do have my IB exams coming soon. So it was really interesting and it was really upsetting for me to develop that skill.
Thanks. I'm glad to hear it was relevant for your coursework and your career aspirations. Awesome. We have another South Shore grad in the chat as well, Tiffany. Tiffany's husband.
Go
Lots
Tars.
of thanks and props.
Aisha, thank you so much for your presentation. This is amazing. I'm curious if there was anything that surprised you either in the process of doing your own research and focus groups, or as you heard from your fellow SAC members on their research and their focus groups. Was there anything that seemed surprising to you in any of those?
Something that did seem surprising to me was the data set that they did share because the numbers was really drastic and really showed a decline in students really being engaged in school. So I feel as if there can be some improvements for that data set, and that could be through outputs or inputs from the staff.
Appreciate you.
Any other questions folks have or reflections to share? Again, really grateful for your work here, Aisha. Really amazing to get out, and speak with your classmates and hear directly, what their perceptions are and how they are interested in these programs. But ultimately, it comes down to access. And I think you hit that nail on the head that it's not low interest, it's low access. So
Right.
more those recommendations will definitely be sitting with me as well to bring more employers in, get some guest speakers, get students fired up, and make sure that the funding is there. And you showed that with your HOSA work of, how to manage the money, just give you the tools, give you the money.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, and we'll let you get back to class. But have a great rest of your day. And thank you, Aisha.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. So really exciting to have those two perspectives, from an area career center, kind of sharing how they've collected that student data on CTE, and then from a student directly. So hopefully can start some kind of percolating around what are the ways that we can really operationalize that student voice within CTE. As Josh pointed out, those hands-on experiences are really driving interest and engagement, and we can really, transform what high school is for students and get their engagement up through some of these methods, specifically CTE and other career-related programming. So to hear more from the other student presenters from our lunchtime session at the Success Network Conference, all of the presentations are, and the panel, the post-presentation panel is available on the Success Network Conference website. So that is linked here, and you'll receive all of these slides after the meeting. But we'll pivot now to just some timely federal and state policy updates. So we'll start on a related note with a federal update that has been coming to fruition and kind of developing federal regulation around Workforce Pell. So this was initially introduced as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed last summer. And essentially what it does in a nutshell is expand Pell eligibility beyond post-secondary degree coursework to non-degree short-term training programs. So these are those 8 to 15 week career focused and stackable credentials that students can earn largely attached within community college settings. That's one of the regulations is that 75% of kind of the instruction and the coursework needs to be managed within an accredited college institution, but also bringing in kind of 25% of those intermediary or employer-focused workforce training groups. So this, legislation is designed to be tailored to those in-demand career fields. So following the labor market data to see kind of, what jobs are emerging as critical in the state labor force and how can we set up the pathways to help students tap into those fields. So for Illinois specifically, we're looking at healthcare, IT, skilled trades, advanced manufacturing. And there are some pretty strict quality metrics that are dependent on the governor to approve programs by these metrics, and then ultimately by the Department of Education. So we're seeing 3 measures here: 70% completion rate of the program, 70% job placement rate upon completing the program, and then a value added earnings test that a student, leaving this program goes into a role with a wage at least 150% of the local area poverty level. So again, governors approved this approval work, and then we're seeing state agencies, ICCB, DCEO, kind of be taking on the reins of setting up the data systems to ensure that we can track all of those quality metrics within the state. And we do see some investment coming down the pipe as well for these programs directly to community colleges from the Department of Labor. Some more to come there. But we just last week received word around the proposed regulations from the Department of Education on kind of the nitty gritty. How will this work for states to implement? So we've linked those here for you to take a look. There are also some great kind of summary articles out there kind of highlighting the most important implications of those proposed regulations that'll then be open for public comment for the Department of Education to eventually kind of make the final call on what the rules of this legislation will be. And then finally, just highlighting this Substack from a national partner, New America, who is doing some really comprehensive statewide work to understand, what does this legislation mean? How are states adapting? What lessons can we learn from that? So a lot of new pieces coming out on almost a weekly basis from that Substack that have been really helpful for us internally of just understanding what this means. And those have been linked in the chat. So another really impactful piece of federal legislation that is definitely going to impact student access and affordability in reaching, post-secondary education. We've seen significant shifts in federal student aid. So new caps on Parent Plus loans, lower than previous loan allotments, the elimination entirely of Graduate Plus loans, new graduate loan limits, changing classification of professional degrees. So with that changing classification comes changing eligibility for students to achieve, access to those loans in fields that, many of the pathways we talk about within policy committee and statewide that are really central to student interests, whether it's social work, education, nursing, definitely going to have impacts on whether students are able to finance that education and get that degree if it's no longer considered a professional degree. And then also just major shifts in repayment to a more restrictive and burdensome for the student approach. So for students, for example, enrolled part-time in programming, maybe they're working and earning that degree on the side, their loans are prorated to match that part-time enrollment, even though we know that's not really how tuition works and how students are paying for their degrees. And then also new repayment assistance plans that replace the prior income-driven repayment plans. So a lot of shifts here that undoubtedly will have a mark in how students are accessing post-secondary degrees. And, that was just a small sampling of the federal shifts that are impacting, the secondary to post-secondary and career trajectory that students are experiencing in their journeys. But for the kind of full breadth of the federal impact on K through 12, early childhood education, and, some of the issues that don't directly fall under the Success Network purview, there's a really tremendous resource in the kind of biweekly Advance Illinois Federal Education Response Group. So there's actually a meeting coming up this Friday from 1 to 2:30. And in that meeting, they offer really topical, subtopic specific updates legislatively, bringing in national partners, as well as engage folks to share action items that they may have within their communities to raise awareness about these changes, to engage in advocacy against some of the more harmful changes coming down. So definitely recommend checking out that group. It's a tremendous resource to stay up to date in all of the changes federally. All right, and then shifting a little bit to the state perspective. So we did see from newly released data from, again, that deadline of July 2025 to either decide to opt in or opt out of offering college and career pathway endorsements. We've seen tremendous growth since 2021 with kind of the outset of the CCPEs. A lot of those, centered within the leadership communities that have kind of taken up the helm to expand these opportunities for students. But just most recently in the class of 2025, we've seen growth to 159 districts statewide and 2,671 total completers statewide for those endorsements. And then you can also see kind of the racial and ethnic breakdown of who is earning those CCPEs across the state. Of course, with the goal to ensure that these opportunities are available to students of all backgrounds and all different districts, regardless of location, regardless of funding adequacy, and all of that.
One thing I'll just note here is I know that ISB is working on cleaning up some of those CCPE earner data because the way that it's collected is self-reported by the districts. And I know in future years, those data will be reported through the student information system. But regardless of data cleanup, like we're really excited to see the growth, particularly in the number of districts that are offering endorsements or have students earning endorsements, and expect to see that number continuing to grow over time with that nudge that had some deadlines last year for commencing implementation or applying to be approved for implementation.
And so I'll pass to Emily just to give some more kind of state level updates here.
Yeah, so we have actually Dr. Megan Mitchell and Laura Monagudo from our team who are leading this work. But as many of you know, we've worked in recent years with the Illinois Community College Board to produce their Perkins Model Programs of Study guides that use a really incredible back mapping approach, starting with the jobs that are growing and have livable wages, back mapping to post-secondary programs that enable folks to access those programs or those opportunities, and then mapping out what course sequences should look like at the high school level that open the most doors, including strategic dual credit, much like Josh was speaking about earlier. And so the guides have undergone some updates in recent years, including some updates last year. They also produced a companion guide last year, and I'll drop links to all this in the chat momentarily, but to help support translation of those guides into local practice. And then Laura and Megan and an amazing set of advisory committees are working on merging the guides the ISB guides that are currently separate from the ICCB Perkins Model Programs of Study, so that we'll ultimately have one set of model programs of study guides that is both for secondary and post-secondary institutions to guide their career and technical education programs of study mapping and implementation. So that work is underway. Megan, Laura, if there's anything else that you would like to share with the group just about that work. I know that you guys have been having lots of meetings with lots of different stakeholders, and if there's anything else you'd like to add, want to cede the floor here.
Hi. Um, the only thing that I would add is that part of the process for merging these is also going to be sort of factoring in and deciding how we incorporate the modernized career clusters framework. So if you've been sort of following those updates and you're wondering how those fit in with all of this, the version as it exists right now, they don't. And there are some things that are the same. There are some things that have moved around, but that's part of the conversations we're having with those advisory groups.
Appreciate that additional layer. Very important to bring these up to speed with the broader conversations around sectors and skills and all of that kind of stuff. To the question about AI and how that's factoring in earlier, I'm sure that's a part of the conversation too. Okay, so next up, we've spoken about this before in this committee, but just wanted to provide some updates. The Dual Credit Quality Act was amended last year through legislative action, and that legislative action did a few things listed here. It basically, really centers our focus on dual credit in the state to emphasize local partnerships and to really exhaust the potential of a local partnership before seeking outside providers, whether that's a four-year provider or an out-of-state provider. ICCB is still in the process of promulgating administrative rules for this. They are hoping to have them published as soon as possible, but they've been working to incorporate feedback from the Dual Credit Committee, which was created in response to this legislation. That is a committee comprised of representatives from both secondary and post-secondary. ICCB and ISB both appointed members of that committee. That committee has also undertaken work last week, met 4 times in subcommittee format to undertake potential updates to the model partnership agreement, which, although it is no longer going to serve as the default agreement in the event of a set of local partners not being able to come to agreement on a particular course, that it's still going to be a really tremendous resource. So that those subcommittees were working on grappling with what are the ways in which state policy, accreditation policy, et cetera, need to be better reflected in the model partnership agreement to help guide folks as they are seeking to establish those local partnerships and scale up early college credit courses, dual credit courses. Um, and so just more to come on that front. I know that the hope is to have an updated model partnership agreement out before the end of the school year, ideally, so that that can help guide partnership processes moving forward, as a resource. The other thing I'll just note, I know that there's often confusion around teacher credentials and what counts as teacher credentials. That used to be governed by the Higher Learning Commission, who in recent years actually shifted their policy on faculty qualifications to sort of shift the burden of making that decision to post-secondary institutions within their network of accredited institutions. What this amended Dual Credit Quality Act does actually is it actually formally legislates some of those credentials. So that is a piece of the puzzle here. So stay tuned on those administrative rules. But essentially, what the amendment last summer did was formalize what was previously HLC's set of standards around faculty qualifications, so that we ideally won't have sort of a patchwork quilt of expectations around the state that could produce some inequities in being able to offer or participate in dual credit courses. So the TLDR on this slide is more to come. A lot is in development. A lot is forthcoming. We will absolutely be sharing it out with this group as soon as those things are ready. Okay, the budget proposal came out from the governor just about a month ago, just shy of a month ago. It's largely a maintenance budget that Governor Pritzker has proposed, very modest increases to certain programming. But one of the notable increases was to mandated categoricals. So these are things like transportation, free and reduced lunch, et cetera. These are mandated, as the name indicates. These are things that school districts have to spend money on, but have not in recent years received increased funding to do so. And so, especially with inflation the way that it is, this has been a really important step towards helping folks keep pace to some degree with inflation. I understand from many advocates and practitioners that this increase is not enough to fully keep pace with inflation, but hopefully it will help defray some of those increased costs. Governor Pritzker's budget also includes a lot of focus on college and career readiness through CTE-related funding, including a new vocational training grant program, funding for improving area career centers, and just maintaining flat funding for CTE. So other things that we wanted to note in the budget here, this dual credit line item that has been in ICCB's budget for the last few years was included in the budget proposal. So we're heartened that there's still continued investment directly in dual credit in that way. ICCB has been spending that money typically on putting out grants to their institutions to help scale up dual credit. We anticipate seeing more of the same in this year if this line item is included in the finalized budget. Higher ed funding is definitely a big topic of concern. We'll talk about it in a second as well, but there was a very marginal increase for higher ed, which doesn't keep up with inflation, but is better than a decline in higher ed funding, perhaps. Flat funding was maintained for all of our state scholarship programs. I'll note that Teachers of Illinois replaces the Minority Teachers of Illinois Scholarship due to federal constraints around using DEI-related language, but the spirit of it remains the same in terms of really ensuring we have high-quality instructors around the state, and that they are able to access that pathway to becoming a teacher. And then, again, there's lots of ongoing investment in teacher recruitment. iWork, I think, recently put out their updated report on the teacher vacancy grants. I can dig up that link and share it out with this group too. But very important investments, as we can all imagine, in teacher vacancies and addressing those teacher vacancies around the state. In terms of the General Assembly, there are a handful of topics that are really popping off. In an election year, often what we see is a lot of people throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall in order to see what might stick. Folks are in primary campaigns, folks are in preparing for the general election in November. They are really excited to try and promote a number of different policies. So some of those key topics that are coming up are high school graduation requirements, which we'll speak more to in a moment, uh, career pathways, college and career pathways, employer engagement in those pathways in particular. The community college baccalaureate proposal is back on the table, as is the higher ed funding formula. There's been a big push around kind of college admissions as well and evidence-based funding. So, as most of you probably already know, the evidence-based funding formula for our K-12 system um, has been receiving increases every year, but it is still far from being fully funded. And so there are some proposals on the table to advance the timeline for at which point we need to be reaching that full funding for evidence-based funding. So we'll see how those do in the legislature. But there's a lot of hubbub because there's a lot of deadlines in last week and this week in the House and the Senate. So there's stuff is constantly evolving. A few bills that we just wanted to highlight just as like examples of these different topics. Senator Lightford has put forth a couple of bills that would potentially shift the foreign language graduation requirement within the high school graduation requirements. This particular bill that I'm highlighting here would allow some flexibility in how schools can offer that, how schools can determine students having achieved that objective, right? So allowing schools to give 2 years of foreign language credit to students who pass a proficiency exam at the level that is required for our state seal of biliteracy. I'll note that currently, if a student earns a state seal of biliteracy, that does count as their foreign language requirement. So I'm not 100% sure what this is meant to address, but I'd be curious if folks have thoughts in the chat. The second part of this bill would be to give that 2 years of credit to students who, let's say, immigrated to the United States or have been in an immersion high school even within the United States, and have spent at least 2 years of high school equivalent courses in another language. So that is another sort of nod towards flexibility. There are a few other bills trying to address the same pressure point around foreign language graduation requirements, some of which include eliminating it, some of which include other processes for giving some flexibility to schools or acknowledging resource constraints around offering foreign language. We'll see where these different proposals go, and Madeline will speak to some work that's emerging in just a moment here, but just wanted to give one example. Go back one slide. So the other two things I'll just note, like I said, there's a bunch of pathways related bills, including this bill from Rep. Vela out in the Rockford area that really is emphasizing employer engagement in pathways and compensating employer participation in pathways if they're offering paid work-based learning. And then the last thing that we know has cropped up recently is there is a bill that would formalize licensure for medical assistants in two different titles of those roles, which would be registered medical assistants and licensed medical assistants. And this is one that we're still digging into, but I think there's some concern from EFEs, our Education for Employment system, and some high school leaders and secondary leaders that if this might potentially impact the ability of high school students to do internships in medical settings. It's a little fuzzy to me, the degree to which it would impact that, but it's certainly something that we are diving into. So if folks have insights there, we are all ears.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily, for those updates on the state level. As she mentioned, some emerging work that we're kicking off in April is kind of a comprehensive look at the universe of graduation requirements that exist within Illinois, kind of the history of the accumulation of those requirements and how they interact with one another, and kind of some of the access and equity implications there for students to complete and graduate high school. So we'll be kind of engaging in stakeholder conversations to, understand kind of priorities from the field in these requirements, and would love to hear from folks in this space to get your reflections and kind of priorities as we move forward in understanding this work. So you can reach out to me. My email is here if you'd like to be involved and kind of share your thoughts in high school graduation requirements across Illinois. And on a related note, ISB just released some guidance around an existing policy that allows local school boards of education to adopt policies that essentially allow CTE coursework to replace or satisfy certain Illinois grad recs. So there's within this document kind of comprehensive look at, this specific course may be substituted for this specific requirement, of course, in line with kind of the content area and the rigor of the CTE experience there, but thought that was helpful to share out. All right, so we'll have just some discussion here around, where do we go from our 60 by 2025 goal now that we're in 2026? Kick it back to Emily.
Thanks, Madeline. For those of you who were at our annual Success Network conference last week, you would have heard Edith talk about this in our opening plenary. As many of you know, the Illinois Education and Career Success Network actually started as the Illinois 60 by 25 network in response to the P20 Council's goal of 60% of Illinois adults having a high quality college degree or post-secondary credential by the year 2025. So, just to catch us up, we are nearly at 60% overall, but we're also past 2025. And we know that moving forward, as many of you would have heard in our plenary presentation from Dr. Jeff Stroll from the Georgetown Center for Education and Workforce, jobs in Illinois will continue requiring post-secondary degrees and credentials. 70% estimated by 2031 will require some sort of post-secondary degree or credential. So recognizing, we can go ahead and advance to the next slide, recognizing that we have passed 2025, we came very close to meeting the 60% goal. We are hoping that we see our state leaders adopt a new statewide goal or vision that will do work to create the space for increasing learner access and retention and success throughout the P20 pipeline. And maybe that goal will be post-secondary attainment. Maybe that goal will be about economic mobility. Maybe it'll be about something else. But we're hoping to see some movement at a statewide level from our agency leaders, from our governor, et cetera, to help craft that broader vision that can guide both statewide investment and work as well as local work. We also think as a network that any statewide goal should be informed by local perspectives and should be giving opportunities for local leaders to work towards a goal that can be meaningful in their context as well. So what we're going to do in just a second here is have a conversation about what should our state leaders be taking into account if they're setting a new statewide goal or vision. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. We're going to try a chatterfall today. So for those of you who have not done a chatterfall, which is such a funny term, we'll put a question up in just a second. We'll have you type your answer, and then we'll have everyone hold off on hitting enter, and then we'll have everyone hit enter at the same time. So we'll see all this series of responses come out in the chat. So Madeline, go ahead and click for our first question, which is what is your vision for learners in your community or in your context? And so for those of you who are in a statewide context, feel free to use either your local residential context or the broader statewide context. What is your vision for learners in your community for the next 5 to 10 years? So go ahead and type your response, but don't hit enter yet. I'll give folks a minute or so to type, and then we'll have folks share out. Okay. If everyone wants to click send, let's see. Oh, I love these responses already. Taking advantage of training programs and apprenticeships that set them up for financial stability and minimizes debt. Real world experience, work-based learning. There's a lot of work-based learning in here. Clear planning for post-secondary, early college credit. Yep, great. Pathways, resources, joining careers in behavioral health. Student agency, college and career, affordable, high quality pathways. These are great. Informed decisions. This is awesome. Okay, Madeline, go ahead and put the next question up. We're going to do the same thing. So before you hit enter, just type your answer to the second question here. What should learners access, experience, and achieve, and why? And we'll give folks a minute to type before we have folks hit enter. Folks can hit enter now. High quality advising, opportunities allow changing of mind, thriving, real world experiences, access to professionals, high wage pathways, range of exposure, work-based learning. This is awesome. Love all these. So feel free to continue dropping those thoughts in the chat. Let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. So I would love to have just at least a brief discussion. I know we're sort of close to time, and we'll wrap up in just a moment here, but wanted to open the floor and think about what themes are emerging for folks. What perspectives do we think should be elevated to any statewide table that might emerge, that we hope will emerge? And what types of learner experiences might we want to center, and what might be missing here? And I'll drop in the chat also a summary of similar responses to the same questions that we got from the conference last week. Folks filled out little post-it notes, so feel free to take a look at that Miro board as well. I'll note a couple themes that are coming up for me is hands-on learning and quality programming and high, family sustaining wages. Those are kind of three, and information, improving information and advising. Those are some of the things coming out for me. Anything else standing out to others on the line here? How can we involve industry more and in a better way? Okay. And feel free to come off mute to share as well, but also feel free to use the chat.
Student agency.
Student agency. Yeah. Thanks, Edith. Any other reflections as we think about these questions? And I'll note from a process standpoint, one of the things that we're thinking about is if there does appear to be emerging work at a state level, how we can elevate your voices, these insights to those tables, whether that's through some sort of memo or trying to meet with anyone who's participating in those. Funding options. Yep. Yeah, how do we recognize that students are making rational choices based on the constraints that they have? Okay. Everything mentioned is important. Civic responsibility. Yep, that's great. Well, thank you all very much for these contributions. We'll definitely be including these as we continue to think about any potential emerging work for statewide visions. We hope to see some work on that at a statewide level, and we can go ahead and advance. We'll share out some resources and look ahead. Just wanted to flag a few reports that we've been reading. PCC's put out some great reports on transfer and dev ed reform that will, again, link all of these on our website, and I'll drop in the chat momentarily. Just recently published the Commission on Purposeful Pathways, which has some representation from Illinois on it, just put out this vision for purposeful pathways for all students. We're going to be diving into that and would be happy to share more on a future meeting. But yeah, we'll share some of these resources out with folks. And then our Success Network conference was the week before last. I think I said last week earlier. Sorry about that. It feels like just yesterday. It was a really great day. We've highlighted a handful of sessions here, but we've also got all of the materials on the conference page. Thanks to those of you who are there. I know several of you on the line presented. It was a really terrific day. And then we've got a bunch more coming up. So there's some Success Network webinars coming up, as well as Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Networks webinars coming up. Madeline will be presenting at the Dev Ed Reform Act conference in Bloomington in a few weeks here. And ISBE's got their Career Connections conference coming up in May as opposed to June this year. And I'll hand it back to Madeline.
Thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciated the discussion today and your continued involvement and dedication to Illinois college and career access and success throughout the state. Really excited to keep these conversations going and looking forward to seeing you at our next quarterly meeting.